All right, man, peace. So Nick Foles, backup quarterback extraordinaire, has made a huge name for himself due to his Super Bowl performance. Now the conjecture is, what will he do? Will he remain in a backup capacity with the Philadelphia Eagles? Or will the Eagles decide to trade him, maybe package him for something that they need at another position? Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
But you guys, I want to stay with Foles. So he's 29 years old. He's got one more year left on his deal. That counts $7.6 million against the cap in 2018. And NFL Network reported that it's not automatic. Carson Wentz will be able to start at the beginning of next season. Stephen A., what do you think they should do with Foles? Should the Eagles keep him?
Well, it's obvious they're going to have to keep him, especially in light of what you stated to start your question, your statement. They need Nick Foles to start off next season. It wouldn't shock me if he starts the first 6 to 8 games of next season and they have Carson Wentz take his time. Once again, Nick Foles does have a year left on his contract. You might as well get your money's worth.
I think they should trade him. I think that he'll never have more value than he does right now. He is the reigning Super Bowl champion and Super Bowl MVP.
I would agree with that if Nick Foles did not already have quite a bit of data on him in NFL circles. Other teams are going to look at Nick Foles as someone who had a magic carpet ride. I think that he would fetch a good amount if they were to trade him. But I think that they're going to need him to start off next season. I believe that Wentz will probably physically be ready by the start of next season, but I don't think that you want to rush him, and I don't think that you want to allow him to rush himself. You want to get at least another good 12 to 13 years out of Carson Wentz. And Nick Foles, his value will lie in the fact that he is extremely proficient for what he does, and that is as a plug-in. He's not someone that you necessarily want to be a starter long term, but as a fill-in, he's about as good as you can get in the NFL right now, especially since Garoppolo is no longer a starting quarterback, no longer a backup quarterback in the NFL.
We're accustomed to seeing quarterbacks get traded, all right, and you get a second, third, or fourth round pick for them. You might be able to get a first round pick for Nick Foles at this particular juncture, particularly when you consider the price tag attached to him.
You would only get a first round draft pick for Nick Foles from a team that was very, very desperate. That number one feels like it's on the cusp of winning something, and number two is very, very desperate. And who would fit that criteria? Would Jacksonville fit that? Would Jacksonville be willing to trade a first-round draft pick for Nick Foles? It would definitely have to be a team that appears to be set at every position other than quarterback. Maybe a Denver Broncos if they're not able to get the former quarterback of the Washington Redskins, Kirk Cousins. I just don't see any other team that would even think about trading a first-round draft pick for Nick Foles.
The fact that he's costing you about $7 million as opposed to 20 or 25 or $30 million or $34 million like a Kirk Cousins would cost you. You know something? He's a Super Bowl champion. He's already done more than Kirk Cousins has ever done in his career. And so when you look at it from that perspective,
Yes, and you also have to consider his supporting cast. The team that Nick Foles has around him, once again, is probably the most stacked team in the NFL. But I mean, it's open for conjecture. I think that Stephen A. makes a reasonable point. But the only two teams that I think are only one quarterback away from us being a Super Bowl contender are possibly the Broncos and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if you're the Jaguars, are you looking at Nick Foles as being that much better than Blake Bortles? I don't think so. And Blake Bortles was not the reason why they lost to New England, by the way.
If you can find a way to position him where you can get a first-round pick and a second-round pick or a first-round pick and a player, if you can pull off something like that.
Stephen A., you'll never be a GM in the NFL. There's no way in the world that a team is going to trade a first-round pick and a current player for Nick Foles. That's ridiculous. The New England Patriots only got a second-round pick, I think, and maybe a third-round pick, something like that they got for Garoppolo. They didn't even get a first rounder for Garoppolo. You think that they're going to get a first-round pick and a player for Nick Foles? Absolutely not. Not by a team, not by the type of team that would need his services, a team that is pretty much stacked at every position already other than quarterback.
Which you could potentially do for a Super Bowl MVP at the quarterback spot. You know that Carson Wentz is the future. And even if he's not available at the beginning of the season, he'll definitely be ready by the halfway mark. I think you roll the dice and you sit up there and you get as much value as you can for Nick Foles while you can, because you know that Carson Wentz is the future. There is nobody.
So you want them to possibly throw away the first half of next season because they expect Carson Wentz to come back. That's your plan, Steve? No, sir. You have to keep Nick Foles. Unless some team just comes and offers you such an exorbitant amount of assets that you cannot turn it down.
In Philadelphia, who questions that this is Carson Wentz's team, no matter what Nick Foles did throughout these playoffs, no matter what he did last night. Because of that reality, you package him and you move him.
This is one of those great sports questions where fans want to play GM and can debate till they're blue in the face because both sides, there are real strong points. But I disagree with you, Stephen A. My initial reaction was yours. I thought more about it. I think you're wrong. I think the idea is here, let's be realistic. I don't think you're going to get a first-round pick for...
Thank you, sir.
...for Nick Foles. I think you might even only get a third-round pick. But let's say...
Based on the market that was set by Garoppolo, you're only going to get a third-round pick because Garoppolo was viewed as being a can't-miss. Someone who could only be held back by a Tom Brady. And Belichick got a second rounder for him. I believe that's all he got. One of you brothers can correct me if they got more than that, but I know it wasn't a first round pick. So I don't see where Stephen A believes that Nick Foles is going to get a first round pick and a player. Like, come on.
That a realistic estimate is a second round pick for Nick Foles. Then the question is, what is the insurance policy of Nick Foles worth to you? Because Carson Wentz, other than Aaron Rodgers and Andrew Luck, maybe, who would you want more as for your franchise quarterback, given age, excellence, everything, than Carson Wentz? He was on his way to be the
Garoppolo.
The MVP this year. He's the best player in football this year until he got hurt, and he's young, and he's still getting better. Carson Wentz is something else. He is going to be your quarterback. You're absolutely right, but he got hurt this year. And they got a guy in Nick Foles that just won them the Super Bowl.
Max, can I interject with a question?
Yeah.
Would you move Nick Foles if you could get a number one pick?
I wouldn't. Because who are you going to have playing quarterback for the first half of next season, Stephen A? Even by your approximation, Carson Wentz may miss the first half of next season, which I believe is a realistic approximation, looking at the extent of the damage that he sustained on his knee. So basically, you want the Philadelphia Eagles to trade in the first half of next season, hoping that Carson Wentz can come back at game number 9, in his full rhythm, with no rust on his game. They're trying to repeat, so it doesn't make any sense. It would make more sense if they were lacking in certain areas on their team. They're pretty maxed out. I don't think that a first-round draft pick is going to be that useful to them. Most teams that are looking for a first-round draft pick is normally because they're missing something in the pass rush, the linebacker, the quarterback, or running back, something like that. Corner. Those are normally the teams that are desperate to get a first-round draft pick. They're not really missing anything in those areas. So a draft pick is not as valuable to them as it would be to another team. Nick Foles right now, I believe they have to keep him. If for no other reason than to maintain the continuity that they have right now and the momentum going into next season.
A first round pick, I would have to think about it, but let me just follow this logic for a second. If it's a second round pick, which I think is more likely, and it costs you $7 million, that's the price of your insurance policy. And as you know, Stephen A., you could be the odds-on favorite to get back to the Super Bowl for 5 years in a row and maybe never get back, and really maybe never win it again, even with Carson Wentz. So when you have a chance, because you think you have a Super Bowl nucleus, and this Eagles team is that. They're young, they're under contract, all of that. They seem to like each other, like to play together, all of that. They just won the Super Bowl with their backup quarterback on a night their defense didn't show up against the Patriots until one play at the end of the game, and they won the Super Bowl because they had excellent backup quarterback play. So, what is that insurance policy against a Carson Wentz injury worth when the leverage is this high, when the stakes are this high? A second round pick and $7 million. Yup, I'll lose the second round pick I could have gotten for him. I'll lose the $7 million to keep the Super Bowl MVP as an insurance policy.
Agreed.
Policy for 1 year. It is a steep price, but I believe it's.
I don't think that the price is that steep when you, as you state, leverage what you could gain by what you currently have already. Once again, draft picks are really only needed by teams that have a poor roster. As you've already stated, Max, the Philadelphia Eagles have probably the best roster in the NFL. They're all young and they're all under contract. What do you need a second round draft pick for? What really is that going to do for your squad? And getting rid of a player who has shown a great amount of proficiency and has provided continuity at the most difficult position in the NFL, that being quarterback.
It's prudent.
No,
Now,
but
Stephen A.
the
Second round pick.
the
At a
problem
certain point, you got to do it.
The problem with your answer is that it's all over the place. And here's what I mean by that. He's the Super Bowl MVP. So I am making the assumption that there is extreme value that you can get for him. Of course, you're absolutely right if what you can get for him is what you can get for the typical quarterback out there. But it's very, very rare that a Super Bowl MVP, it could be on the market because there's somebody who is over him. That's the point that I'm trying to make. You know how the old adage goes, Max, if you got two quarterbacks, you really don't have any, because the reality is that you got somebody that's in the way.
Right, but that adage, when you have two quarterbacks, you really have none, that normally is pertaining to a team who does not know who their starter is going to be. There's no confusion on Philadelphia in regards to who their starter is going to be. When Carson Wentz is healthy, he will be their starting quarterback, Stephen A. So your argument, even though I can see some of the sensibility in it, is mostly based off of the red herring that Nick Foles should be equivalent to Carson Wentz, and he's not. He's a backup quarterback who had a hot run. We've seen that in the past in the NFL. We saw that with Jeff Hostetler. We saw that with Doug Williams. We know what has happened to those quarterbacks when they have been given an elongated time period to start for teams. I just don't see a team being willing to trade for Nick Foles and give up a number one. And I don't see how Philadelphia needs a first-round draft pick. So I just don't think that it's feasible for anyone involved.
So thinking about that, because that's what NFL aficionados have been preaching to us religiously for decades, if you have that reality where you've got two quarterbacks and you don't want somebody to get in the way of your stud, who's a star, who unquestionably could have led this team because he was a league MVP candidate.
So you think that Nick Foles is going to get in the way of Carson Wentz? Brother, please.
Top two MVP candidate until he went down. Now you have a situation where Nick Foles balls out in a manner that you never foresaw, not to this level. So you maximize.
Right, but has he truly balled out per se? He's played extremely well for 2.5 games. Like, let's pump the brakes, Stephen A. He's trying to create this scenario where Nick Foles is now a threat to Carson Wentz's starting position. And that is just not the case.
His value at that particular moment in time and get that first round pick. That's where I'm at with it.
Here's the problem with our argument right now. We're not really arguing philosophically about whether or not you keep or trade a guy like that. We're arguing about what the value is. At what point do you make that deal? A late first round pick versus the insurance policy, I have to think about it. I probably still say no, because he just won the MVP for a team that's poised to make another run.
Thank you, sir. That's what it's all about. Stephen A., I don't think that he truly understands what he's saying. Basically, you're stating that you want to go into the start of next season with a starting quarterback in Carson Wentz, who may still have some lack of certainty in regards to the health of his knee, a team that is looking to repeat, and a quarterback in Nick Foles who knows his place on the team, that is as a backup. Nick Foles at no point has shown that he intends to compete for the starting job with Carson Wentz. I think that he, to a degree, is living in a certain realm of reality. I think that he's happy that he was given the opportunity to excel to the degree that he has due to Carson Wentz's injury. Once again, he did not become the starting quarterback by beating Carson Wentz out of a job. I don't think that anyone is assuming that or even trying to imply that other than Stephen A. Smith. And I would truly doubt that there is a team in the NFL that's willing to give up a number one draft pick for Nick Foles. I just don't see it. And I mean, I can't even look around the landscape of the NFL, pardon me, and see a team that is one quarterback away or that is just Nick Foles away from being a contender for a championship. I mean, when we view most of the teams in the NFL who we would think are one quarterback away, I would say Denver, I would say Jacksonville, maybe Arizona, maybe. But is Nick Foles going to turn them from being an 11-5 team that gets to the AFC or NFC championship, or even in the case of Arizona, a team that had an off year who could be one quarterback away from contending for a title? I don't think so. I think that for all parties involved, it's best to stand pat.
And that insurance policy, your backup quarterback actually is extremely important, and they got a guy. They got a guy who just did it. So Super Bowls, when you can make when you have a window, boy, you better take advantage of it.
Agreed.
Now look, Stephen A, at a certain point.
I mean, how many Super Bowls did people think the Seattle Seahawks were going to win? They had their opportunity to win back-to-back. And because the coach outsmarted himself, they're never going to return to that level, to that stature ever again. They're going to have to blow that team up.
If you're saying, what if they get a first-round pick and a second-round pick? Okay, like we could pile it up high enough where we both would have to agree, got to pull the trigger on a deal. But that package would have to be enormous.
I agree. And just getting back to the Seattle Seahawks, I honestly believe that a lot of the wokeism that goes on that team is a manifestation of their frustration with the coach, Pete Carroll. Remember, wokeism is really just a branch on the agent of chaos tree. And a lot of times people like to provoke chaos or havoc in their environment when they're frustrated about something that happened in their past. They no longer trust their steward, that being Pete Carroll. And they just have to be broken up. That team is not going to go anywhere. They're still suffering from a lot of damage, psychological damage from that game. And I say this again, when I saw that Super Bowl, how it played out in the end, I knew that they would never be the same. That was too traumatizing. Just me as a viewer, and I'm not even a Seattle Seahawks fan, I was borderline traumatized, but I was shocked when I saw it. I said, what the hell? Dude just jumped in and intercepted the ball in the end zone. Like the craziest shit. Like if you were to bet the odds on that happening in Vegas, I guarantee you, the odds of an interception in the end zone to end the game in a Super Bowl, I mean, you probably could have bet 1,000 to 1 odds on that.
For me to really be, to push it over the top and to trade a guy who just won Super Bowl MVP and is an ideal backup for the best young quarterback in football.
The last backup quarterback to lead his team to a Super Bowl and win it, that would be Tom Brady back in 2001. First take just getting started.
Oh, there you go. But anyway, we'll see what happens with Mr. Nick Foles. He certainly is living a charmed life right now. Peace.